in the life of a teacher, it was immortal. And so I think that's what I said for the news guy. The greatest use of a life is to spend it in a cause that will ultimately outlive it. And so we're here today, 48 years later, you know, to say thanks. And so, Steve, you want to start?
Sure, okay. Just another indication of that, though, is I think Steve Scher and I totally independently use your name in vain as our password clue. Our, you know, favorite teacher,
Numbskull.
I don't know what he's protecting. I can't remember right now what I'm protecting in the way of data, but we use your name. Okay.
Because it has 4 letters, and that's my name.
Oh,
There you go.
almost like a practical response. Yeah.
All right, I wrote this at Rick's request. It was supposed to be part of the citation on those certificates you got. I don't know how close they come to this or not, but this is what I wrote, and I wrote this. It just sort of flowed out of my head in about 5 minutes. Now here goes. Dave King, or Mr. King, as we 8th graders at Sudbrook Junior High knew him, demonstrated all the qualities of an effective teacher. He maintained discipline, transmitted the information called for by the curriculum, and inspired his students to go beyond just getting by. He maintained classroom discipline first and foremost by his sheer size, all 6 feet 7 inches, and also through a piercing stare at and through anyone who stepped out of line. He leavened his strictness with a sense of humor that included playing recordings of popular comedians such as Stan Freberg, Bob Newhart, and Bill Cosby. Who's Bill Cosby, right? He introduced us to the jazz great Vic Beiderbecke of the silver cornet fame long before the popular culture rediscovered him. He taught English grammar with a straightforward daily drill approach that actually worked, inspired by his own struggles with the subject in high school. He could relate to virtually all his students, from the straight-A high achievers to the wise guys and girls who were, let us say, not academically oriented. He connected with everyone, either in matters of the intellect, pop culture, or on the basketball court.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And so my part will be to talk about one day. So I thought it was the spring of 1962, but we've been having discussions and I seem to have been a little bit off there, but that's not the first time my math was wrong. But it was sometime in the early 60s, and I was at Johnny Cake Junior High School, as you folks know, Baltimore, Maryland, and I was in section 7B. Now in the earlier years, the teachers had tried to avoid giving us negative labels, so we had the Bluebirds and the Redbirds, but we all knew who was who. So by the time we got into 7th grade, we all knew that the 7th grade was A7A was the smart accelerated class, and then there was my class, 7B. I was majoring in playground. I was an honor student. Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. I won't do that anymore, Your Honor. So classrooms, I was like a prisoner about to be granted a furlough for the summer. The classes were too long, the desks were too short, the recesses much too short, and so P's masqueraded as Q's. I was a classic left-handed, dyslexic, hyperactive little boy. M's and N's, they were all indistinguishable to me. The teacher for both 7A was Mr. King. He was kind, knowledgeable, and at 6'7", from our diminished vantage point, was even larger than life. One day, quite unexpectedly, Mr. King went to the kids in the 7A class and he said, "You know, there's somebody in the other class that's just as smart as you are. He just doesn't know it yet. I won't tell you who he is, but he's the kid that knocks the ball over the right field fence and outruns all of you." Word of Mr. King's declaration reached me as we boarded the school bus that afternoon, as my friends told me the story. Yeah, you gotta be kidding, I said nonchalantly, trying to act really cool. But on a deeper, more subtle level, a tiny candle of a flicker had been ignited. 2 weeks later, it was time for the dreaded book reports. It was bad enough to have to write in the hand the book reports, but alas, there was nowhere to hide when it came time for the oral book reports. So I chose James Fenimore Cooper's epic book, The Pathfinder, the story of 18th century America. And as I started telling the story, the images of the Indians gliding through the woods noiselessly, or walking through the woods noiselessly, going through the water with hardly breaking the water. And as I started talking, the more I talked and got all these images, I got more excited and more excited. And all of a sudden I'd be right in the middle of one sentence, and then I wouldn't finish that, and I would jump to another sentence. And my words were making no sense at all. And my classmates all started laughing. And I wanted to hurt them, but then I acted really cool and acted like it didn't matter, and I learned how to mask all those feelings. And so, embarrassed, I started to go sit down. The word of Mr. King's deep voice cut through the words. "You know, Danny," he rained forth, "you got a unique gift. You got the gift to think inwardly and to speak outwardly. But the problem is your words can't keep up with your excitement. Your excitement is enthusiasm, and your enthusiasm is based in encouragement. It's a wonderful gift, and I hope you'll put it to good use someday." My classmates who had been laughing at me stopped and started clapping. As a miracle of transformation occurred. 30 years later, on Thanksgiving night, I took my time to say, I've got fancy words now, I'm a psychologist. We call it turning a perceived minus into a plus. We call it reframing. But I take the time to thank all the Mr. and Miss Kings who make a difference. And so that's the story of Mr. King that's in Chicken Soup for the Teacher's Soul. It's the best teachers in the world, and as he predicted, leadership by encouragement has taken me all over China, Malaysia, Singapore. So Mr. King, this is your day, and this is your moment.
You know, how much our society labels people? It's not up that we label soup cans, that we label parking spaces, that we label dogs, but we label kids. He's slower than average. The hell is slower than average? What is average? No one's ever explained to me what average is. Is it the difference between here and here, or here and here? Two different averages, Because if it's up here, it's up that. See, it isn't real. It's nonsense. It's what I call phony baloney statistics. You know, we get, and you hit a nerve when you see these red birds and blue birds, and God help vultures and so on and so forth. And that's right from the get-go we do this. From the get-go. The kid hasn't even had time to sit down and examine where he is. You're a vulture. You're a bluebird. You're a redbird. Blah, 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 blah. In my own, I have a story similar in my own life. We're in 4th grade, 5th grade, and in those days we had to read a passage. We had to all read the passage and read, start, and they said stop, stop. And you count the words. And that was your reading speed. And I had to do this, and I was reading. I started reading when I was 5. My father used to read me. One thing he did was read me comics. Every Saturday night we got the comics every Saturday. And so I started reading. And I gave him the number. It was a couple hundred, 300, I don't know. And the teacher, she was mean, Miss Huber. She said, she was telling me I was lying. Sent me to the principal's office. Now I'm sitting on the bench outside. I'm crying. I'm upset. What's going to happen to me? So the principal, nice lady, came out. So came in, gave me a passage, read it. So I read it. She said, now what was that about? I told her. Come in. Stood outside. She came in. You go in. Took out the teacher. Next time the teacher came in, she was blood red. Red as this. She never talked to me again. Which is okay. Because it was May. It is. You can label a kid lying. To tell you the truth. You can label a kid dyslexic. Whatever that means. These are conveniences. Well, we don't know what his problem is, so we'll say he's dyslexic. All right, we'll move right along, ladies and gentlemen. You know, it's wrong. Just plain flat out wrong. I have one of my grandsons, they're talking about maybe he's ADHD. Maybe he is. Then again, maybe he ain't. This kid, because he has problems reading in 2nd grade, and he inverts letters, throw him a pile of Legos on this table, and he'll create something out of his mind out of that. See, my doctoral work was in something called creativity. Not intellect, creativity. And we used to have a test on how to work on one of the simple things of this. And we had a test, give it a brick. You got 10 minutes, tell me how many things you can make with a brick. Average kids will get 20, 30 things. Creative kids get 200 things. So again, oh, he's creative, he can't be smart. He's smart, he can't be creative. Can he be both? I don't know. How about Steven Spielberg? Is he pretty good both ways? I expect so. As long as we in the business of education, and it is a business, folks, $1 billion business, all the time, in Baltimore County alone. What we do is, we give short shrift because we don't know what we're talking about. We spend times pointing fingers rather than figuring, how do I solve this? You know what I've learned about being an AA? There's a guy, Dave, you ain't it. A lot of teachers think they're God. They make that mistake. By giving them a license to teach, you give them a license to do whatever they want. That's not true. Every one of you